we will begin rather from this matter, talking about if all goes well with the plans already put in place, then workers in the country will be smiling to the banks soon. This development comes as the federal government this week unveiled a 37-man tripartite committee to look into the implementation of the new minimum wage for Nigerian workers. The current 30,000 naira minimum wage expires in April 2024, as its 5 years lifespan will end on April the 18th, 2024, since it was signed into law on April 18th, 2019 by former President Muhammad Buhari. Now, the tripartite committee, which is made up of representatives of organized private sector, organized labor, and government, will be inaugurated at the council chamber of the presidential villa, Abuja, at noon today. The committee, led by a former head of civil service of the Federation, Buka Aji, are to negotiate and agree on a new minimum wage, which the federal government will, through an executive bill, forward to the National Assembly for legislation. As much as it is music to the ears of workers, saying, because NLC had been talking tough in recent days, saying that government made promises to increase the salaries of workers. Recall that there was some level of negotiation last year with the government, looking at an increment of from 30,000 to 200,000. That was what Labour was proposing to government. And government, they had a back and forth with government. And the government said, you know what, we're going to have a tripartite committee to look into this matter. Labour was waiting to see what government would do. And nothing happened last year. But this year, they began to talk tough that it's seeming like government is not walking the talk, and so that they might down tools at some point. But then we see now that government is saying we have set up a 37-man committee to addressing this issue. Some governors are there to also represent zones, and Labour is meant to be part of that. Organized Labour is meant to be part of that, to also look into that. But first, I would like to address the matter of how well did we perform with the previous minimum wage of 30,000 naira.
Yes, you know, since 18th of April rather, 2019, the minimum wage of Nigeria has been steady at that 30,000 naira, and it has been issues with other states who were not able to pay you know, over the years, and some states also struggled to pay, and that's one of the problems. It's just one thing to say you've jacked up the new national minimum wage, but then for other states to be able to pay, because some states are not even creative when it comes to generating revenue. The only thing they do is to learn to collect, revenue
from the federal government.
Yeah, share the revenue. I mean, the revenue formula they get from the federal government. So it's actually announced. It's a good thing that the president also announced in September 1st, 2023, about the 35,000 the additional wage award, the 35,000 naira. So currently, they are receiving about 65,000 naira. Although some are saying that they're able to get theirs, but then in the meantime, they've been getting about 65,000.
Right. So how well has that, worked for a lot of these workers? Because there's also the private sector.
That's right.
So other sectors, how are they benefiting from all of these measures?
So looking at the current one, which is the 30,000 naira minimum wage, which is the one backed by law, it's definitely going to end by April. 18. No, it's going to end by March 2024 this year, and then another one takes effect in what comes after March? April. Yes. Yes. So it's actually going to take effect, immediately the 1st of April this year. So, for the first time, in the budget speech, the president mentioned collaboration with subnationals, which you mentioned, as the governors talked about the NLC, talked about the other stakeholders, talked about so many stakeholders who will be coming together to have a conversation about how they are going to pay the national minimum wage. And I feel that's going to make it very effective, because the states would also, it will encourage the states to make adjustments to their budget peculiarities. So it's a good one. The federal government has about 1.5 million workers. Some of these that they said that they are over bloated. So the National Assembly has to invite the heads of the MDAs to look into, how all of this, and the recommendations made by the Orsai report about, duplication of work, duplication of ministries, and all of that. So to see how they can harness all of these together.
Yeah, but as much as we are having this conversation of the tripartite committee inaugurating them later today by 12 noon, all of it is fine, right? Yeah. Personally, what is most important for me is how it gets to the ordinary man on the street.
That's right.
Who is finding it quite challenging to sustain himself at a critical time like this. Look at the inflation rate. We are almost hitting 30% as it is. And the value of the Naira keeps dropping. Yes, we know that the government has injected some monies to defend the Naira, but are we looking at long-term plans? Are we looking at how we can have something sustainable, not just in the immediate, such that everyone can feel the impact of government's policies and move to help the situation of the average Nigerian worker? That's my issue. State governments that haven't been able to pay the 18,000 naira, the 30,000 naira.
And some are still owing.
And some are still owing. Yeah. What happens? Now you are increasing it. In that conversation, are we going to say that? Are we going to have a situation where we begin to bring these states to question and hold them accountable?
It's actually a criminal offense.
Right. So what happens? In a document I was reading, Labour was saying that it has engaged with some states, some responsive, others not responding, with regards to this matter of the increment of the minimum wage, because that is what they are there to do, to defend the workers and ensure that their rights and privileges are given them as at when due as it is. So if some states are not responding as it is, how far would these conversations go, even if we have a committee inaugurated?
Before we run out of time, I would like the committee to consider some of the followings which are enumerated here. The cost of living, which you already spoke to. How much is it to rent a house? How much is it to buy things?
The essence is for the wage to reflect the realities on the ground.
The inflation rates, they also have to consider that, the purchasing power will be strengthened, the economic growth, productivity levels, because the amount of money you receive as salary also reflects or impact on your productivity level. You can't receive small salary or major salary and they expect you to be productive on the job. They also have to consider the social factors, the global standards, and lastly, which you already spoke to, the ability to pay. Because if they're saying they're taking it to 200,000 naira, and then they have to consider other states too, whether they will be able to pay. So, it's going to be a very broad negotiation among all of these committees, but we hope that they arrive at a very reasonable and concrete and reasonable conclusion at the end of the day, which will make the people...
Absolutely. We hope we can arrive at a reasonable conclusion that also reflects the interest of the average Nigerian worker. Yeah. That's not just even the average Nigerian worker, but Nigerian, because it cuts across. Everybody feels the impact as it is right now. But we'll leave this conversation here.